Yeah, but abivax didn't have a bad thesis. Right? aTyr's thesis is backwards. Like, and they had phase 2 data that showed it worked. aTyr is phase 2 data that shows it doesn't work. The comparison, my man, is inapt. Yeah, I mean, the thing about abivax is they had preclinical data that made sense, early human clinical data that made sense, and then late stage human data that made sense. You can miss 1 out of the 4, but basically aTyr is 0 for 3. No mechanism, no preclinical data, no human clinical data early, and definitely not going to have human clinical data late. Getting a donut here, buddy. Hate to be the one to tell you this, but it's over. It's fucking over for you. Look at this guy. You need a lesson in logic. How can it be that we know how a drug works? Well, I'll give you some examples. Shall we? How does drug discovery work in general? Well, there is, I'll give you a good example. This is Rituxan. This is cell surface. This is CD20. Rituxan is an antibody to CD20. CD20 is known to have a B cell maturation effect. When you make an antibody to CD20, guess what happens? B cells don't mature. B cell go down. B cell disease gets better. Okay? If you can't draw something like this, does it mean your drug can't work? No. But it's not good. Okay? And then you take something like this and you say, all right, well, let me look at those symptoms. You take this part and you say, all right, you have a tumor, your tumor volume. You give Rituxan, and tumor volume does this. Pretty good, right? I mean, that's good. This is the idea. This is the first data, and then the second data, and then the third data. It all should work. This first part, could you be missing this first part? Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't know, maybe you do. But it's important. It's the most important thing because it's your starting point. When you come up with your theory of how a disease works, you have a theory where you make the drug. You know, if you make a tool, you say, well, I need to make, a fidget spinner. Well, you think about the ball bearings, and you think about how something's going to spin on an axis, and so forth. You can't just sort of wing it. You have to design it. It's a machine. It's a nano machine. You don't just fucking throw shit at the wall. You have to come up with a theory. And once your theory's developed, you got to prove that your theory's panning out. So if you have a flimsy theory, it's not a good thing. It's a fucking bad thing. It's really bad. But it doesn't mean you can't get lucky. I mean, you have a 1% chance, maybe. But then you have to see good data here. Unfortunately, abivax doesn't have that either. The data's terrible. And then the human data, abivax, it's worse than terrible. So what the fuck do you think's going to happen here? I mean, the miracle of miracles has to happen. It's amongst the worst I've ever seen. problem with their theory is it's broken. So their theory is that there are people, it's aTyr, with this anti-Jo antibody, or the Jo1 antibody. And that is against this antigen called HARS. And people who are sick have this antibody. And they have lung disease, okay? And they have muscle disease. Tons of disease everywhere. Big problems. And it's coming from HARS. How can you tell? Well, it's a really important question. So 20 or 30% of people with myositis, dermatomyositis, polymyositis, they have HARS antibodies, or this Jo1. But does that mean that it's causing the disease? Well, we can take HARS and put it in a mouse, and we can give the mouse the same disease by putting the Jo1 antibody in here, not the HARS, and you get the same output. So you take somebody who has lung disease, but they don't have the Jo1. They still have disease. They don't have the myositis. They just have the lung disease. And you give them HARS. But HARS isn't helping people avoid sarcoidosis. That's their theory. Their theory is because Jo1 comes with interstitial lung disease, it must be the HARS protecting the lungs because Jo1 is neutralizing the HARS, so that the HARS is gone, so now they have disease. No, it's Jo1 that's causing the disease. How do we know that? Well, HARS doesn't do anything in the body. Doesn't have a biological impact. And when you give HARS to animals with sarcoidosis, they don't really get better. In fact, the only thing you're really doing is you're risking an immune response. And we know what happens when you make an immune response to HARS. You get a really bad phenotype. You get myositis too. But if you look closely at what HARS does, I mean, it's really an intracellular protein. The only reason it'll ever get out so that you can form an immune response to it is because you have muscle damage. So you have muscle damage, you get zoom in on this muscle, you get HARS inside this muscle cell, muscle breaks, that's what happens. HARS gets out, causes an immune response because HARS is generally just, it's invisible to the immune system. So now it's in the bloodstream. Oh, we got to neutralize this foreign protein. And now we need to make this antibody to this antigen. So giving a whole bunch of this weirdo protein to these poor sarcoid patients is just going to cause hell to break out. And you look at the clinical data; they didn't get any fucking better. At best, it's it's within error bounds. It's your best case scenario. I mean, I've never seen such a layup in a long time, man. Yeah, they magically found the real protein that it binds, the protein that doesn't do anything. You can't make this shit up. How the fuck that work? sarcoidosis. The patient obviously doesn't have sarcoidosis. You're an idiot because you think that. That's how I know you're a moron. Why didn't anybody just punch Dr. House? Fucking asshole, right? Now give me my oxy. Could you imagine the Hollywood guy pitching this? Got a brilliant doctor, but he's addicted to opioids.